So if you're more of a casual LEGO enjoyer, or maybe you grew up with it as a kid and then eventually grew out of it, you've probably never considered brown to be one of LEGO's more iconic colours, and I was very much the same when I was younger. When I was a kid, I had very few basic bricks in brown. I just had stuff like minifigure accessories or seats or crates. Honestly, the thing I remember the most about brown LEGO when I was younger was just being kind of annoyed that a lot of my new brown bricks looked different than my old ones, and not really understanding why that was. However, I am very happy to report that not only is brown doing very well for itself right now, with multiple different shades being produced in multiple different parts, appearing in several excellent LEGO sets, but brown also has one of the most interesting histories out of any colour in the entire LEGO catalogue, and that's what I'd like to talk about today, because, at least to me, this shit is absolutely fascinating. Now, when we talked about Teal a couple months ago, we only had to go back as far as 1998 to get to Teal's origin, but with brown, we gotta go way back. Starting off in 1974. So, starting off in 1974, we saw the very first brown LEGO piece, and it's a hair piece, which seems like it makes perfect sense, until you remember that LEGO minifigures that would, wear these hair pieces weren't introduced as we know them until 1978. And the reason for that is that this hairpiece isn't made with minifigures in mind. Instead, it's intended for these, which I've seen called maxi figures, which is very cute, I have to say. This brown hairpiece appeared in 5 sets in 1974, including such absolute bangers as Family and Windmill with Miller and His Wife. Serious stuff right here. And believe it or not, until 1978, this was actually the only brown LEGO piece. So, it's definitely a bit of an interesting start, but we'll see how things go from here. Moving on to 1978, we're finally getting some new brown pieces, but they're still very much made with the maxi figures in mind. For example, things like door and window frames that take their larger proportions into account. However, there is one set I want to focus on for a second, and that's set 232, Bungalow, because it includes 2 of a very, very interesting piece in brown, that being 2 32 by 32 base plates. This is absolutely fascinating to me, because not only are these base plates completely exclusive to this random set from 1978, but it's one of only 3 sets ever to actually include brown base plates, with the other 2 not releasing until 1999, that's 21 years later. Those sets being Ninja's Fire Fortress, which includes a 16 by 16 base plate, and Emperor's Stronghold, which includes a 16 by 32 one in brown. These are the only 3 sets ever to include brown base plates, and I don't know why, I just think that's really fucking cool. However, like I mentioned earlier, 1978 is when we saw the introduction of the first classic minifigures, and with that comes the first ever brown minifigure accessory, that being the iconic broom, appearing in 2 sets in 1978, Street Sweeper and Town Square. Also unrelated, but I love that Street Sweeper comes with a random 2x2 plate for this minifigure to stand on. It's like when they introduced minifigures, they weren't completely confident in their ability to just stand up on their own, so they had a little backup plan. It's very sweet. There's also this brush piece, which minifigures could use, but it's actually not made with minifigures in mind. It's got a slightly longer handle than the one you might be used to, and only appeared in 15 sets from 1978 to 1993, including such absolute classics as Peter Panda Takes a Bath. While this brush only ever appeared in sets in brown, it's apparently been sold on Bricklink in bright light orange, so I don't really know what's up with that. The modern one with the shorter handle was introduced in 1994, and again, was introduced in brown. 1979 gave us a lot of cool new brown stuff. For example, we got the iconic Knight's Lance in brown, we got our first brown minifigure hairpiece, brown made its first ever appearance in LEGO Duplo, and we got our first new addition to the brown family, that being Fabuland Brown. It's a very obscure colour that was only used in LEGO Duplo for a few animals, and in LEGO Fabuland for furniture and a few of the characters. Now, one thing I do need to establish is that I'm absolutely not going to be going through every single set that happens to have brown pieces or every single brand new brown part, because it's just a bit of a fruitless endeavour. There's over 1,000 sets that include brown pieces, but a lot of them are just sets that happen to include 1 or 2 brown accessories. Like, if you go through the list yourself, you'll find so many sets that are just, oh, this comes with a broom, or, oh, this just comes with a minifigure who happens to have brown hair, and nothing else. After mostly just receiving hair, brooms, and lances for a couple years, 1984 finally gave us some cool new brown shit, giving us our first brown wheels in some castle sets, and they're pretty dang neat. We also got some fun new accessories, like spears, bows, pitchforks, hoods, and a brand new hairpiece. You'd love to see it. 1985 was also a big year for brown, giving us the iconic LEGO treasure chest, which would receive an updated version in 1989 that had 2 slots in the back. 1986, however, is a massive one, because 12 whole years after the color's introduction, we finally got a regular ass brick in brown, that being the 1x2 brown brick. And what did they do with it? Did they use it to make some cool brown building or something like that? No, it's to fill in the back on a horse when you don't have a minifigure in there. Great stuff. We also got the 1x2 brown tile, and it's, again, used for filling in the gap on a horse when you don't have a minifigure in there. Great stuff. Bit of a shaky start, but, you know, it's still good. Still good. 1987 gave us our first 1x2 plate in brown in 606 Camouflaged Outpost. Can't see it? That's because it's on the goddamn horse again. 1998 gives us some cool stuff, such as the 2x2 round plate, the iconic LEGO barrel piece, and the brown Technic wedge belt wheel, which is used as a part of the drawbridge system on the Black Monarch's castle. Now, if somehow you're not completely on board with brown LEGO so far, have no fear, because that is all about to change, since 1989 gives us the monkey. And what a monkey he is. The monkey is introduced in LEGO Pirates, and LEGO Pirates is the source of a lot of brand new brown bricks, although a lot of them are very specialized. They're very much made with things like pirate ships in mind. Pirates is also responsible for a lot of cool brown minifigure accessories though, like pirate hats, blunderbusses, peg legs, and they appear in a ton of sets like Pirate Lookout, Raft Raiders, and Skeleton Crew, which, newsflash dumbass, that's one skeleton. And that's not a crew. I got my eye on you, LEGO. 1991 gives us the 2x2 round brick in Rock Island Refuge, where it's used to represent logs on a raft, in my opinion to great effect, and 1992 gives us the iconic ladder piece, which appears in several Pirates and Castle sets. 1993 is another big one, giving us the iconic 1x1 brick in Rocky River Retreat, and the 1x3 plate sneaks its way into 2 Castle sets. 1993 is also where they started introducing these curved pieces in brown to be used for trees. Up until now they had primarily used black for this, which works in its own way, but having both is nice. 1995 gave us these very weird curved bricks that have animal faces printed on them, such as a lion, a mouse, or even a funny monkey. These are practically completely useless for building, but I don't know, I thought they were kind of funny, so they get to be in the video regardless. 1996 introduced these textured 1x2 and 1x4 pieces that kind of look like logs, and they feature very heavily in the new LEGO Western line. For example, the iconic Fort Legorito has 148 1x2 bricks and 93 1x4s, which is just super charming to me. I really enjoy that. 1996 also gave us this weird larger version of the barrel which I had never seen before. It's very strange. It only appears in 17 sets from 1996 to 2014, and it's pretty much exclusively used to hide minifigures in. 1997 gave us the iconic Witch's Broom in brown, which was introduced under the Fright Night sub-theme of LEGO Castle. And I want to hold on this for a second, because one of the sets it comes in is Witch's Magic Manor. And Witch's Magic Manor is fucking hilarious to me, because it includes a witch, who you'd think would just fly around on the funny broom, but instead uses this absolute fucking doohickey, which has like 2 witches' brooms attached to the side for like propulsion or something, and has this wacky propeller which is made of like 4 massive bat wings. I just wanted to draw attention to that because I think it's incredible. I love shit like this. 1997 also gave us the inverted version of this arch piece, which was previously used to represent tree branches. Weirdly enough, it only ever appeared in 2 sets, and on both occasions, it was used to represent the remains of a shipwreck, which I thought was pretty neat. 1998 gives us a lot of cool stuff like the 1x3 slope, and the 2x2, 2x3, and 2x4 plates. LEGO Adventurers is to thank for a lot of that. And there's also some cool stuff introduced in the Stingray sub-theme of LEGO Aquazone, such as the 4x10 plate which was introduced in the Stingray Stormer. Now 1999 was a big year for brown LEGO. Of course we got those two base plates I mentioned earlier, but we also got a lot of very important bricks like the 1x6 brick, the 2x4 brick, the 6x6 plate, and, big one here, the 1x2 brick with a Technic hole in it. That's massive. Funnily enough, the only set it appeared in this year was the Droid Fighter under the LEGO Star Wars line, and that brick wouldn't actually appear again until 2002. Honestly, you have to thank LEGO Star Wars for a lot of new brown parts. It was a massive factor in brown becoming a much more common colour in the LEGO palette. However, while we do have to give credit to LEGO Star Wars, 1999 also gave us a much cooler theme that makes excellent use of brown pieces. And that's Rock Raiders. Interestingly enough, brown's usage in Rock Raiders is actually quite limited, but it's nonetheless very striking, and that's mainly I think to the fact that a lot of the pieces that are brown in Rock Raiders are very large, like the roll cage pieces or the propellers on the tunnel transport. In my opinion, the use of brown does wonders to contribute to the more grungy industrial look of Rock Raiders that I've grown to appreciate so much, and funnily enough, it wasn't always supposed to be this way. If you look at a lot of pre-release imagery for Rock Raiders, you'll notice a lot of light grey being used in place of brown. And man, I gotta say, they made the right choice in the end. I don't think Rock Raiders would have the same vibe without brown. I think it was absolutely a great move. Rock Raiders also introduced things like the Rock Monster in brown, or these boulder pieces, which again are brown. I love these boulders, I think they're super charming. I love that you can open them up and hide crystals in there, I think that's just brilliant. Although one thing that I think is very neat, in the actual sets themselves, these pieces are very much just accessories, like a little fun thing on the side. But two of the alternate builds for Rock Raiders HQ try and incorporate the boulders into the actual builds. One of them has them on like this weird tower here, which like spins and stuff. I don't really know what the idea is there, but it's very cute. And then this other one is very ambitious, because they've opened up the boulder and tried to use like half a boulder to create these floodlights. Very fun idea, but the way this is built is insane. This entire structure is just held on by one stud. This would never get past quality control today, even for an alternate build. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. But yeah, it's very cute, I gotta say. Although one thing I do have to say, just quick little tangent. Rock Raiders fans, I love your boulders. I love that for you. I'm glad you're happy. But I am first and foremost a Power Miners enjoyer. Where the fuck were our boulders? We got none. Like, you made a whole ass theme, which is inspired by Rock Raiders, and is also about like mining underground, and you could have done this again. You could have done this again, and they didn't. We got no boulders. The Crystal Sweeper comes with a catapult that uses two of the bottom halves of these rocks, so you can't like combine them to make a full rock. I don't know. I'd love to know the thinking behind that. Drove me fucking bananas as a kid. That was rude as hell. Now, with that out the way, we're moving on to 2000, and we got some more cool stuff like the 4x6 plate. But, big one. After 26 years, we finally got the basic ass 2x2 brick in brown. It appeared in 2 Dino Island sets and a LEGO Star Wars set. Talk about fashionably late. Now, 2001 gave us more cool stuff like the 1x4 brick and the 2x3 brick, which, weirdly enough, at the time, was exclusive to a small polybag set called Tree 1. Humble beginnings, I guess. But I'd argue the most notable brown type thing that happened in 2001 was its use in Bionicle. For the first 3 years of Bionicle, the combination of brown and tan was the primary color scheme for characters representing the element of stone. So we got a lot of cool new brown parts. Notably, we got the Kakama, which is Pohatu's mask, which, you know, that's pretty fucking cool. I like that. Actually, speaking of the Kakama, if you've ever owned the LEGO Bonsai Tree, great set, by the way, if you've looked at the back of the instruction manual, you might notice there's a bunch of, like, recommended trees that they're like, oh yeah, you can, like, customize this to make these. And one of them just uses a bunch of Kakamas and Kakama Nuvas to make the leaves on the tree. I don't know how they expected most people to go about that, but I think that's pretty charming. Now, in 2002 and 2003, brown really had become a bit of a staple color for LEGO. Like, we're receiving more and more basic bricks in the color, and they're appearing in much more sets. I mean, the UCS Yoda from 2002 has a bunch of them, and does this look like someone who'd lie to you? Yeah, I didn't think so. By now, most of our basic brown bricks are accounted for. You could get packs of brown bricks in bulk, and brown being a staple in both Bionicle and a lot of licensed themes would make you think that brown had a long life ahead of it. Funny story. You see, 2004 gave us reddish brown, and reddish brown was introduced not just to be a new color, but to replace the old brown, in the same vein that dark bluish grey and light bluish grey were introduced to replace dark grey and light grey respectively. Now, there's a lot of conflicting information out there on why LEGO made this change. A common theory is that dark grey and light grey were prone to kind of going yellow over time, so they just introduced a better dark grey and a better light grey. That's not entirely true, I don't think. It is true that if you leave them out in the sun for a while, the old dark grey and the old light grey, they do kind of go yellow. But you shouldn't really be doing that with any bricks, and it doesn't really account for the old brown, so From what I understand, this was done less so due to some kind of issue with the old colours, and more so just part of efforts to trim down and modernize their color palette, so they'd have something that they could just stick to for years to come, rather than just continuously introduce colors that they'd use in a very small handful of sets. Cutting down on production costs like this was a key priority for LEGO in the early 2000s, because in case you didn't know, they were under pretty severe financial pressure back then. They were close to bankruptcy, and mainly kept afloat by the success of some of their licensed themes, and especially Bionicle. And to be fair, they did sort of immediately follow up Bionicle with Galador. And look, I know there are Galador fans out there, but from a purely business perspective, that's like winning the lottery and then immediately investing 85% of it in NFTs. It could have gone better is all I'm saying. LEGO's large color palette and their tendency to overuse very specialized molds for pieces in the early 2000s was definitely a source of financial strain for the company, so really cutting down on them like this was the right move, although it was sad to see a lot of cool colors go, like sand red, medium green, and let me tell you, there's not a day that goes by where I'm not thinking about the loss of chrome antique brass. Weirdly enough, LEGO replacing the old brown and greys like this was less of a financially motivated decision and more just something they happened to do at the same time as trimming down their color palette, and sets featuring the new brown and greys began to roll out around early 2004. I don't think LEGO really thought much of this decision at the time, since they already updated little things about colors and pieces here and there, but the backlash to this was actually pretty severe, and as a result, LEGO have vowed to never change any of their fundamental colors to such a degree ever again. And from what I know, they haven't. It does make sense why people were annoyed by this change, because thanks to it, old dark grey, old light grey, and old brown, they're effectively a finite resource now. If you want to add on to themes that were produced before this change, you just don't have as much to work with, especially if they predominantly feature old dark grey, old light grey, and old brown. Either you have to actively seek out these old parts that are no longer being produced if you want your mocks to fit in, or you just bite the bullet and use the new colours that don't mesh as well with the original sets. It makes sense why people will be frustrated, but luckily it's not going to happen again, so we're good on that one. However, we are by no means done, because yes, brown may be down, but they are by no means out. Despite effectively being replaced by reddish brown, brown managed to hold out until 2006 before being well and truly discontinued. It managed to sneak its way into things like buckets, polybags, promotional sets, and the initial releases of certain miscellaneous sets, like Viking Ship Challenges the Midgard Serpent, where the usually reddish-brown ores are old brown in some early releases. I won't lie though, a lot of this just kind of feels like an effort to use up leftover brown parts, and nowhere is that more obvious than in the Bionicle accessory sets from 2005 and 2006. The sheer amount of brown parts in these is a little suspect, to put it lightly. Just as an example, the one from 2005 comes with 10 of this connector piece in dark bluish grey. Makes perfect sense, very important piece for any Bionicle fan, you want to have a lot of these. But despite the fact that it comes with 10 of them in dark bluish grey, it comes with 17 of them in green and 35 of them in brown, which is a little ridiculous to put it lightly. These accessory sets are super charming, and honestly, I would have loved these as a kid, but it's hard to deny that they're just a bit of a dumping ground for leftover parts. Like, yes, I'm sure the number one thing a 2006 Bionicle fan wants is 10 fucking Rockshi torsos. Yes, absolutely, give me. However, one fun little quirk of these accessory sets is that one of them from 2006 contains a brand new brown piece, the only one to be produced after 2004. And it's a Ratuka spinner with a marbled pearl-like grey pattern. I don't know what's up with that. I guess they just had some leftover brown plastic that they dumped in a mold. I don't know. It's still fun though. However, on the topic of Bionicle in 2006, even as we leave brown behind and transition into the reign of reddish-brown, we're not quite done with the shenanigans just yet, because there's more just weird, bizarre stuff to touch on. And first things first, we need to talk about the brutal betrayal of brown Bionicles. In 2006, despite its history of being used to represent the element of stone, brown was actually phased out of Bionicle due to the distinctly poor sales of sets that predominantly featured brown in their colour schemes. Aardvark of Paraka fame was one of the last brown sets we'd see in Bionicle, featuring a colour scheme of reddish brown and dark tan. On the other hand, Huki Ignika, despite being a tower of stone, had completely dropped brown in favour of a colour scheme of pearl dark grey and bright light orange, more commonly known to Bionicle fans as gunmetal and Keat orange.
I'm the guy!
Stop saying you're the guy. We all know that you're not the guy.
In 2007, Huki kept the bright light orange but had dropped gunmetal in favour of black, and in 2008, we've got Pohatu, the original Tower of Stone, in a colour scheme of orange and dark grey. Reddish brown actually doesn't feature in 2007 or 2008 of Bionicle at all, only having a tiny appearance in 2009 with Borox, where these armor pieces are primarily tan but melded with reddish brown. Don't get me wrong, they are lovely looking pieces, but it is a shame that this was effectively the last hurrah of brown in the first generation of Bionicle. Kinda deserved a little bit more in my opinion. At the very least, reddish brown did have a small comeback in the CCBS era, appearing in Ogrim under Hero Factory, Chi-Mungus under Chima, and in a handful of the CCBS Star Wars figures. Technically it also appeared in Humongousaur under LEGO Ben 10, but I don't know about that one, Chief. I'm trying to sell you one reddish brown here, so like, let's maybe pretend that one didn't happen. However, even now, we are not done with the controversial history of reddish brown. You see, yes, reddish brown replaced brown. It is what it is. But if you're going to replace something with something new, you would hope that the new thing is at least up to par with the old one. Funny story. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when this started becoming an issue, but at some point around the late 2000s and early 2010s, something happened with reddish-brown bricks in production that just made them notoriously brittle. Reddish-brown bricks from this era were just ridiculously frail, and they would often just snap if you tried to separate them from other bricks. It is kind of insane just how frail these really are. Like, this shit has the structural integrity of, like, a Mars bar. I don't know what's going on here. You know how people joke about stepping on a Lego brick being, like, the most painful thing in the world? I'll be real, if it's a reddish-brown brick, I'd say the brick could be worse off after.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we are conducting the most dangerous experiment in human history.
I believe this had something to do with the pigment used to give these bricks their colour at the time. This was not a reddish-brown exclusive issue. Dark red and dark brown had the exact same issue, and they're fairly similar. It makes sense they would have similar pigments, so I don't think that's exactly a coincidence. Either way, in late 2018, LEGO finally acknowledged this issue, and they had supposedly fixed it earlier that year. They just wanted to make sure their fix actually worked before making the statement, and from what I understand, it did. You don't really hear about this issue happening anymore, unless the bricks that it's happening with are old. And also, if you have reddish-brown bricks from, like, the mid-2000s, you should be just fine. It's mainly late 2000s and early 2010s bricks that had this issue. Now, that pretty much does it for all the silly stuff that's happened with reddish-brown, And I hope you don't mind, but I'm not going to break down like individual reddish-brown pieces and sets that contain those pieces the same way I did with brown. Even with brown, I just focused on ones that I thought were neat rather than going through every single one. And with reddish-brown, there have been over 2,200 parts produced that appear in over 4,600 sets, which is like practically quadruple what brown got. Reddish-brown is currently a staple color for LEGO. It's everywhere. Shit, I could buy one LEGO Minecraft set and have more reddish-brown than I ever had as a kid. So, yeah, it's doing just fine for itself. I mean, you can hardly escape brown bricks these days.
Brown bricks?
What I would like to do before we finish up though, is focus on a few other members of the brown family. Just other colours that sort of fall under the brown umbrella. First off, we have light brown, which was introduced in 2002 and discontinued in 2006. Despite only being produced in 40 parts across 28 sets, I'd argue light brown is a very iconic colour, and that's mainly thanks to its usage in 2004 to 2006 under Bionicle. Notably, it's the colour Toa Anawa is, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Interestingly enough, even though Arvok himself contains no light brown, it's also the colour of the mask on top of his canister. Which, I don't know, that's kind of fun I guess. Outside of Bionicle, it was mainly just used in LEGO Duplo, but weirdly enough, its introduction in 2002 was as a hairpiece in a LEGO Mindstorm set. And that was its only appearance until 2004, which is really funny. I'd like to think that just confused the shit out of some random LEGO fan in 2002. I think that's really fun. Next up we have dark brown, which was introduced in 2007 and is still being used today. Like reddish brown, this colour is very much a staple, being produced in over 800 parts so far. There's not a lot to it, although one interesting thing about it is that its only appearance in 2007 was in the Dwarf's Mine. It's the only set it appears in this year, and it's only used for the minifigures that appear in that set. Next we have dark orange, which was introduced in 1994 and is still going strong today. And I know what you're thinking. Yellow. Orange is not brown. You fucking idiot. And yes, I know, but this is notable because it's the colour that the 2015 and 2016 Pohatu are. So, in my heart, it's brown. That's how I was introduced to this colour, and I personally love it. Dark orange was mostly exclusive to LEGO Duplo for years, with its appearances outside of that being really bizarre, like a horse in LEGO Scala, dinosaurs in Dino Island, and even a huge base plate that featured no studs whatsoever. Even after this, its uses were generally quite specific, like turkey legs or hair pieces, or the guy who says the funny thing in Star Wars, although it did make a few appearances where you could get actual bricks in the colour, like in this space shuttle set. Nowadays though, dark orange is very common. You can get a lot of like regular ass bricks in the colour, and believe it or not, there have been more dark orange parts produced than dark brown ones. Granted, dark orange had a 13-year head start, but I like dark orange more, what can I say? 2022 saw the introduction of medium brown, which so far has exclusively been used to represent skin tones. So far, if we're just strictly counting official retail sets and excluding like exceptions such as Darth Vader having grey skin under his helmet, LEGO has used 10 different colours to represent skin tones over the years. Granted, 2 of those are now discontinued, but it's still cool to see. Also, while we're on the topic,
You might assume that the first time LEGO used a colour other than yellow to represent minifigure skin
was in 2005 when they started doing that for their licensed themes like Star Wars. However, it was actually 2 years prior in 2003 where they created these sports minifigures that were meant to replicate NBA players, where they used brown and nougat. I remember people clowned on these a lot for their accuracy. Believe it or not, the Irish person making a LEGO YouTube video doesn't have the best knowledge of the NBA, so I'll take their word for it. And lastly, we have this colour, which to me is trans black. It's a pretty common colour, it's been used mostly to represent things like tinted windows and windscreens. It's fun, it's good, nothing wrong with it. However, in 2023, LEGO introduced this colour, and to them, that's trans black. So, where does that leave this colour? Well, with the introduction of the official trans black, this colour ended up getting renamed to trans brown. Trans black is actually the most recent LEGO colour as of making this video, so That's pretty cool. I don't own any parts in the color myself, but I will say I am a massive fan of trans brown. I've used it in a lot of mocks, I think it's a lovely color, I'm a big fan. And if it's trans brown now, that's fine by me. So there you go, that's a little deep dive into the history of brown LEGO, and some other members of the extended brown family. I hope you found this fun. I was really surprised how much there was to talk about. I kind of figured this would be like the Teal video, where there was just like one big thing that happened with the color and then it just went on to being perfectly normal. But the history of brown LEGO is so much deeper than I expected, but it's been a lot of fun. Either way, I hope you really enjoyed this, and I'll catch you next time.